afternoon. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa and Wellington, often cloudy, a few showers clearing from Wellington and Wairarapa tomorrow afternoon. Marlborough, Nelson and Buller, mostly cloudy, scattered showers mainly about Buller and the Sounds, clearing this evening, fine tomorrow. Westland and Fiordland, fine today, cloud increasing tomorrow and a few showers developing towards evening. For Canterbury, Otago and Southland, mainly fine with morning frost, but a few showers about Banks Peninsula. And the Channel Islands, showers this evening. You're listening to RNZ National. It's just gone 7 minutes past 2. I'll have the headlines at 2:30.
In your afternoons with me, Wallace Chapman, in for Jesse this week. Very soon, if you're a Mavis Staples or Bonnie Raitt fan, it's your lucky day. Music critic Colin Morris on this afternoon. And in New Zealand sporting history, we go back to a big moment in netball, a particular move. It's called the Harrison Hoist that broke the mould and had many imitators. In the 3 p.m. hour this afternoon, solving the world's problems was New Zealand Herald senior writer. And this week, what on earth is going on with Auckland's Golden Mile, he asks. He's written a column about this actually too. Shop after shop after shop, empty. Empty. And he reckons that landlords need to get off their butts and make it happen and just stop moaning. So I'm sure you'll have responses to that. We also have Dr. Grant Morris. He's looking at the history behind the fan base that the Liverpool Football Club has here in Aotearoa. And BBC's Witness History is about how British art historian John Richardson became a friend of the great Spanish artist Picasso in the 1950s. Well, let's get to Link 3, and in the first hour I played this song here, by New Water. What a great bass line, isn't it? True Faith. What a song. We have our second song very, very shortly, but we have Don on the line, who may or may not know the answer. So far, Don, kia ora.
Kia ora, Wallace.
How are you this afternoon?
Oh, good, thanks. Bit chilly.
Yeah. Where are you calling from?
From Wellington.
Okay, very good. Hey, so, what do you think at this early stage?
Yeah, look, obviously only one track so far. But my thought immediately was Joy Division tuning it to New Order, and really I thought maybe the clue would be a band where the lead singer died or perhaps committed suicide, but I don't know if it has to be that fine-tuned. And then they reformed it as something else.
Very, very good guesses, Don. Very good guesses, but not quite. Not quite. Are you a New Order fan?
Yeah. I mean, I bought that album.
Yeah.
How long ago now as a CD, and I like them. I mean,
cool,
and way back in the day, when Blue Monday came out, of course, everyone was leaping around to that one.
Hey, thanks, Don. Thanks for your guess. Also with us, we have from Tamaki Makaurau, Paul. Paul, welcome.
Tēnā koe, Wallace.
Okay, so Don had a great guess there. Bands that reformed after the lead singer died. Not quite. How about you?
Oh, I think Don's going to do better than me. I cheated. I listened to the Giveaway album, and from the title I took it was, the Link 3 was Mistaken Love.
No.
Which I'm an expert in.
Are you? Do you want to explain a bit more?
Well, I end up with women, like I went to Burma and I met a girl and she was cooking things that crawled around, snakes and frogs and crickets and all that, and I never used to eat the food, and she said to me, Paul, you never touch my food, and I said, yeah, but I think it touches me. And another time I was in Thailand and I met a lovely woman, Joanna, and I went back to a village to look for her, and where's Joanna, and they were all laughing at me, and finally one of them said, oh, you mean John.
Paul, love is a journey, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Love's a real journey, and we never get to the end. I'm just trying to think of a metaphor here for you, Paul. But back to the Link 3, wrong burgers. But thanks for being with us. Kia ora. So
Thank you, Wallace.
Not about Mistaken Love, but Paul, thanks for the stories there. All right, so first link, True Faith by New Order. Here's the second song, Out of Control by the Chemical Brothers. Unmistakable sound of the Chemical Brothers there, out of control. I feel like I'm at the gathering. Goodness. I've got my glow sticks. Rain's happening, it's muddy. I've got my glow sticks, I'm at the gathering. Goodness me. Brings back memories, doesn't it? 1999, Out of Control. So that is the second link. First one was Faith by New Order. This one here, Chemical Brothers, Out of Control. What is the link? Text me at 21001. Well, with us now is, we're jumping from one style of music to another. We have our music critic Colin Morris joining us. Kia ora, Colin.
Good afternoon, Wallace. How are you today?
Good. How did you find the Chemical Brothers?
Not my cup of tea. I can appreciate how clever they are, but I just couldn't quite get into them. I don't know why. There was a certain period when you just don't particularly like artists, and then when you look back, you think, oh gosh, I wish I'd have looked at them more. People like Talking Heads. I missed their concert in Wellington, and it was a couple of years later when the film came out, and I thought, now that's the band I should have gone to see.
Absolutely.
And it was the same with Little Feat. I thought at the time they were a bit country, and I didn't go to their show. And then a couple of years later, Lowell George died, and I'd listened to their albums again, and that was another band I thought, why did I miss them out of my listening pleasure? But that happens.
That happens. And these next two artists, you don't need glow sticks for these two artists, Colin, because they're so good. They don't need stuff like that. They are just A-class, aren't they?
I think they are brilliant. I've been to see Bonnie Raitt twice now, and twice I've come away absolutely fizzing because she leaves it all on the stage.
She does.
She has a really crack band behind her, and I don't know if it's the same musicians, but there's just something about your eyes and your ears go straight to her, and I don't think you really look at anybody.
No, she's a legend, and also a great guitar player.
Oh yes, that's right. I think she, if memory serves me correct, she's in Rolling Stone's 100.
Yes, she is.
Guitarist.
Yes, she is. She's got a certain style of playing, and love it.
I was more attracted to her blues playing, but then when she veered away from that, I thought, wow, this is a clever move. She's not sticking with one particular trend in a repertoire. And I think that's really why she's certainly worth going to see any time she ever comes out to New Zealand.
Oh, I love it. Do we have a track?
We do. It's called Just Like That. It's a brand new album. It's a 21st, which is staggering when I can't remember them all. This particular track is actually a love track, but she does some left-of-centre things as well. She does a track called Down the Hall, which deals with about a man in hospice care who she sits with because he has no relatives or friends to see out his last days. It's just a fabulous track. It's a bit maudlin to play today, which is why I've chosen Just Like That.
Here it is, Just Like That, Bonnie Raitt. From the 24th solo album. And how beautiful is that, Colin? I describe that as cinematic. That's cinema right there. I'm driving down an empty road and I'm looking out the window and I hear that track.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the way she drags out the words at the end of some lines.
Beautiful.
And it just flows and snakes. It's very poetic, as you say. It's got a thematic feel about the whole thing.
And is that replicated on other tracks on the album?
Oh yes, very much. As I say, that track Down the Hall is very much like that. It's a slow piece. I mean, she rocks out. I mean, one of the things that you like about Bonnie Raitt is she mixes up with the blues, which is the particular style I like her in. But she's she can lay down a good funky beat.
She can.
Every now and again.
She can.
Yeah.
Bonnie Raitt, you sold me. I'm going to go buy the album. Thank you, Colin.
My pleasure. Well, it's out this week.
Okay, but equally as I've got to say, actually, a bit of I had the extreme honour of interviewing on Sunday morning both these artists we're talking about, Bonnie Raitt, and the person I was really excited by speaking with was this next artist here, formidable history, not least because she played with Prince as well. Who was it?
We are talking about the one and only Mavis Staples. At the age of 82 now. She's still going. She's still putting out albums. Put out all those albums with her father, Pop Staples and the Staples Singers.
Yeah.
And then when he passed on, she went solo and went on the road with her sisters. I know one of them has passed away recently, within the last few years. But she's still touring and she's still playing. And I'm very jealous that you've interviewed her, because I did meet her and I picked up a photograph with her, but unfortunately I cannot find it. I don't know what it was on in my...
To be honest with you, it was less an interview than just her telling her story, because her life is so significant. You mentioned the Staples family, the gospel era, coming through into the later years, Prince being a fan. I mean, goodness gracious, Colin.
Yeah, I know. You can't imagine her with Prince, because Prince to a God-fearing woman like Mavis would have been sort of singing the devil's songs.
I think she relaxed that a little bit in her later years, but what do you have for us this afternoon?
Well, normally at this stage I play a track from the past, and I explain the lyrics behind it, and the meaning and who wrote it and that sort of thing. What I've done is I've chosen a track from her very latest album, where she's recorded with Lee Von Helm. Now, Lee Von Helm died in 2012 at the age of 71, died of throat cancer. But believe it or not, it's his birthday today, which is why I chose the track. Now, the track is The Wait, which was written by the band. If you look on the albums, it's always credited usually to just one member of the band, that's Robbie Robertson. But in actual fact, that the whole band contributed to the song, and it was one of the reasons that Lee Von Helm never went to a couple of the band members' funerals, because he knew that Robbie Robertson was going to be there. So there was a heck of a lot of animosity towards between the two of them. And according to Lee Von Helm, when the last waltz was made, the film, which is still one of the greatest rock films ever made, he said that Robbie Robertson never asked the other members about breaking up the band. So again, he was pretty upset about that.
All right.
Staples appeared on the show with Pop Staples, and they performed The Wait, which was just great. And then later on, she did it on another album, and now she's done it this time with Lee Von Helm. But say the track goes back a few years. It's only just been released.
Okay.
Lee Von. Yeah, sorry.
We're coming in to 4:30, Colin. So why don't we just take a blast and go straight to the track? This is Mavis Staples, Lee Von Helm. Colin, as always, Cura, thanks for your wonderful tracks here. This is The Wait, Mavis Staples. Bonnie Raitt Just Like That, and Mavis Staples and Lee Von Helm, The Wait. Beautiful. It's just gone 2:30. It's time for headlines.
Kia ora, Wallace. 16 more people have died with COVID-19, higher than the 7-day rolling average of 12. There are 7,591 new community cases. Almost 4,000 Christchurch households affected by the stench from the city's damaged wastewater plants will get financial help after councillors voted to provide more than $1 million worth of funding. And the acting Prime Minister has paid tribute to Takaparaso Bastion Point occupation leader Joe Hawke at his tangi today, calling him a man of immense courage. Those are the headlines. I'll have more news at 3 o'clock.
This Saturday morning, who was the woman known as Jane Roe, who made legal history in Roe versus Wade? I talked to the investigative journalist who wrote We Own the City about brazenly corrupt Baltimore police officers. The music writer Nick Rudin on what pop stars do when their lights have dimmed. Coke and Hilla host, join me Saturday morning from 8 on RNZ National.
Wallace Chapman in for Jesse Mulligan this week, and nice to have your company. Thank you very much for your guesses regarding Link 3. So just recapping on that, it is Link 3 day today. So the first song of the Link was New Order by True Faith. Then we had some Chemical Brothers, Out of Control. So True Faith and New Order, Chemical Brothers with Out of Control. And we have the third track for you, and already lots and lots of guesses coming through. And the prize is Sharon Van Etten's new album. It's called We've Been Going About This All Wrong. You can get in touch by text 21001. It's been 10 years since former Silver Fern Anna Harrison stunned the netball world with a rugby line-out style lift and darkest shot at goal. The so-called Harrison hoist came when the Northern Mystics were taking on the Melbourne Victors in May 2012. It dominated the sports headlines and divided opinion about whether it was in the spirit of the game and whether it would catch on. Orange sports reporter Bridget Tunnicliffe joins us to discuss that historical move. But first, let's go back to that moment.
This is a mini comeback. There's still plenty of time in this game. On the sideline, unbelievable. Here's Howard, can she do it? To get it within three. Unbelievable. What a superstar. Now, you know what, this crowd can...
Harrison, you are a freak. Richard, kia ora. Welcome.
Kia ora.
Yeah, do you remember when Anna Harrison did the lift?
I do. I never get tired of hearing that commentary, and I never will. I remember where I was when Princess Diana died, and I remember clearly where I was when Anna Harrison did the lift. Yeah, it was a lazy Sunday afternoon watching netball on the couch on Sky Sport. When I saw her do that, I leapt up pretty quickly, and I called my flatmate to come quickly and watch it in case she did it again. And she did. I think she did it another 3 times. It was the final quarter, and I loved it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and yeah, the Mystics went on to win that game.
Did it come out of the blue, do you know, or had anyone tried it before?
It did, it caught everyone off guard. It totally came out of the blue. I think, it had been tried before, but not necessarily successfully and caught on camera. So at the 2011 Netball World Cup in Singapore, there was a game between Singapore and Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka had this massive, ridiculously tall goal shooter who's something like 6'7", and the Singaporean defenders did try to lift each other to try and at least put off the pass to her, but I don't know if they were actually successful. Certainly no footage or photos of them actually grabbing the ball at the top of the lift. Yeah, but it planted a seed. So I think the Silver Ferns coaches saw that while they were at the Netball Cup, and the next year at a Silver Ferns training camp in January, they discussed it as being a possibility, and then Anna Harrison was a Silver Fern at that time, and then it was discussed in the Mystics team, and they were willing to give it a go. They said, why not? And I think players had fooled around with it at training, but not actually seriously thought of doing it in a game. Men's players had been doing it for a few years, but it certainly was not part of the women's game at all. Yeah.
Okay, so for those who have just joined in and going, okay, so I'm not a sporting fan and I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. Describe what this lift is, what it was.
Okay, so the shooter was she was lining up a shot, and as she was doing that, Anna Harrison, so in netball you have to stand 3 feet away from the player who has the ball. So Anna Harrison would have had the 3 feet, and her defensive teammates, so there's 2 defenders in the circle, Jess Moles got ready to propel her, and it's not as if Jess Moles completely used all her weight to lift Anna.
So you mean lift her?
No, Anna jumped anyway, right? So Anna jumped anyway, but Jess just helped hang her in the air that little bit longer. And so, the shooter went to shoot the shot like she'd done thousands of times, and Jess lifted up Anna, and Anna literally plucked the ball out of the air before it landed in the goalpost. So, yeah, it was quite an amazing thing to see.
Cheating?
No. No, I think...
bending the rules.
Well, it was stretching the rules, but what they did, the Mystics did this right in Melbourne. So this was in the former Trans-Tasman competition, and they decided before that game, we'll give it a go in this game. And so they actually let the umpires in Australia know that they were planning on doing that. And so they got confirmation from the umpires. Hey, we're planning on doing this. Is this going to be okay? And the umpire said, there were no rules against doing that. What you can't do is you cannot touch the net. So if Anna had gone up there and her fingers had touched the net or the rim, then that would not have been okay.
Understood.
But she came away from the post. Yeah.
So you did an episode of the Kiwi Netball Show to mark last week's 10-year anniversary, and you spoke to Australian commentator Sue Gordian, who was behind the mic that day. Let's have a listen to what she had to say.
When you listen to our commentary back then, you can tell through our voices that we couldn't comprehend what we saw, and I think what was really interesting at the time is because Mystics were up. So it was almost like they pulled this trick out of their bag, even though they're up right at the last, it was only 5 minutes to go in the game, and no, I genuinely could not comprehend. It's commentator's dream, to be honest with you. I mean, you're always looking for something a little special, a big specky interceptor, a long bomb shot, or that incident that people question. But this was just a moment that I think Dan and I paused for a bit, because I think we're both sitting there in shock, and then you just hear us go, oh, this is extraordinary. So I had no doubt in my mind it was going to attract interest at the time. What I was more interested in was who was going to pick it up in the league after that, because it was like, okay, well, it's open slather now, so, what happens from here? But I actually followed up and spoke to Deb afterwards. I had to know. I wanted to know what was going on, and, they said that they'd had some rugby players come in and sort of teach them how it was all done. So, absolute kudos to Deb Fuller coaching and both Anna and Jess at the time.
They had rugby players come and teach them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I remember the following week after the Mystics pulled it off, I've got a vague memory of the Canterbury Tactics bringing in some Crusaders players to their training to give them some pointers of how to do it. So as soon as Anna did it, it put the seed into the opposition, to other players' minds, and they started thinking, well, if she can do it, maybe we can.
What kind of reaction did it get? Did people like it, hate it? What's the reaction, Bridget?
Well, the Melbourne crowd didn't like it. Once they realised what she actually done, there was a lot of booing from the Melbourne crowd. They thought maybe it was unfair to their shooter. I think some Australian fans vented some disapproval on social media, but I think that was a minority. By and large, I think the response was positive. People saw it as innovative, exciting, and it got people talking about netball, which was always going to be a good thing.
Yes, and media attention. What sort of attention did it get?
Oh, it dominated the sports headlines in New Zealand for the next 48 hours. It was great for netball from that perspective. It also got quite a lot of media attention in Australia because they did it in Melbourne, so it had even a greater impact because it happened over there. I went back to the archive, and the next day expert commentators like Dane Lois-Muir, former Silver Ferns coach Yvonne Willering, everyone was asking all the experts their thoughts on it. It was great, and I think people who weren't normally interested in netball saw that and thought, wow, this is actually a very athletic game. Yeah.
Speaking with our Indeed Sports reporter Bridget Tunnicliffe this afternoon on Afternoons about this so-named Harrison Hoist, which came when the Northern Mystics were taking on the Melbourne Vixens in May of 2012, and you had Silver Fern Anna Harrison, who stunned the sporting world really with a rugby line-out style lift to block a shot at goal. It's still remembered all these years on. People still talk about it. And you also interviewed the Australian shooter, who was I guess you could say the victim of the first look. Let's listen to Karen Bailey.
At that time we were down and we were kind of having a bit of a momentum shift and coming back, and I remember turning to shoot the ball, thinking nothing of it. I was right under the post, took the shot, and obviously the lift was then played, and you can see from my reaction to some of the clips of utter shock. It was kind of like, what just has happened? And again, it was just kind of, it gave an element for a shooter, kind of just sent that fear into every single shot you put up. But from then on, because you're like, is it going to happen again? And we all know that Anna had a phenomenal jump to begin with, but yeah, there was just no way that you were getting that ball in if you didn't have the other player blocking the shot for you, or you didn't get a quick start. It just completely ruined any rhythm that you had on court.
Do you remember the crowd reaction?
Yeah, they were quite vocal about it, to be honest. There was a lot of bullying at the time, I remember. And obviously from 16, there was a lot of cheering. I remember their coach going really, excited about it. So they'd obviously been practicing at that training. And, it was such mixed emotions within the stadium, because you're in shock personally as a player. And the crowd behind you, it was like home day for us. They're all booing. The Mystic fans are all excited. Their bench is absolutely excited. They're behind them. It was an electric kind of feeling that day.
That's Karen Bailey there, the Australian shooter, who was there at the game there. And did you have any trouble getting Karen to talk to you?
No, it amazes me, really, that the people that agree to talk to me. I was a bit nervous about contacting her. She's actually over in England these days, and it always occurred to me that all these clips of that moment always focused on Anna Harrison naturally, and I always wondered what it was actually like for Karen, the shooter. She would have been completely blindsided, but yeah, she was happy to talk to me, and she went on to tell me in the podcast episode that she thought, she didn't want to be, she didn't love being the victim of it, but she liked the fact that the headlines that it generated, comparing it to a rugby kind of situation, it kind of put netball on the spectrum as to discussing it, and generated the hype. So she thought it was phenomenal for the sport. So it was really good of her to talk to me, and she said she thought it was a great thing. And I think what it did is it actually really challenged the sport and made people think about how they could stretch the rules. And I think that innovation was part and parcel of the time, because the ANZ Championship, as it was back then, it was the Trans-Tasman competition that actually wound up in 2016. It was an environment that really encouraged that kind of competition, and teams having to think, how can we keep getting better, and what do we need to do to challenge each other. And it was just really exciting to see the Mystics pull something out that no one had ever seen before.
When you think about it, this speaks to what really makes sport unscripted beauty, doesn't it? It's all about the innovation and those little twists and turns that you have in any code, whether it be a certain flick of the hand in javelin, or a new style of running, a new style of footwork, a new style of footwork in tennis. Every sport, every code will have their own little innovation that just makes it that much more interesting to watch, but also much more challenging to play and to play on.
Nothing ever stands still, does it? There's always that little push for that little, swifter, higher, faster. There's always that push to be better than your opposition. And I find it interesting to think that if Anna Harrison hadn't done this 10 years ago, how many more years will we have waited before we saw this move? Someone has to have the guts to be the first person to do it. And it's really cool that a New Zealand player had the guts. And I don't know. I'm not sure.
Are you suggesting that this move was both inevitable and important for netball?
I don't know, but it's still with the game now. It's not done. It's not done every minute of the day.
Yeah.
It's not done. It's not something you pull off at grassroots level. But if you turn on the TV now and you watch the top Australian league, you watch obviously the New Zealand league and the UK league, commentators don't go, oh my gosh, that was a lift now. Like, it has become part of the game. If someone hadn't had the guts to do it, and 10 years on, if Anna hadn't have done that, maybe we wouldn't have that today. It could have taken another 10 years, who knows?
Yeah, I'm just noticing this, looking at some bit of feedback here, the Herald headline following day, revolutionary hoist tactic adds interest to the game. Now, you also talked to the exponent, Anna Harrison, who described practicing the move behind closed doors. Here's Anna.
The training that sticks out the most was the Mystics training, where we were really like, let's do it. And we sort of came up with thoughts around how I was going to get up there, not just lifting, whether I would stand on someone's leg or, other ways just to get up there and stay up there. And at one point I was sitting on someone's shoulders. We tried to get up as fast as I could while I was on their shoulders, and I'm like, this is wrong, like sitting on someone's shoulders, swiping at balls is like that. And that wouldn't have been allowed anyway, because in the spirit of the game is a rule. So we had to play around with a number of things, but just the lift, I've always had a strength of jumping shots through my career from, I guess, that translated from volleyball really, those timings. So I just had that extra lift to get to the rim, that gives more time and air to get the ball. So there was a lot of playing around, which was fun.
It must have been pretty exhilarating to pull it off, and you literally did pluck the ball out of the air in that last quarter. It must have been a great feeling.
Yeah, it was. It's obviously, we'd thought about it, and to be able to pull it off in the game, again, you could feel once you did it once that she was thinking about it. Her shot, one of them wasn't even probably going to make the rim on its own without me jumping. So again, that's part of our job, is to get in their heads. And for someone that was experiencing that, a shooter experiencing that for the first time, it was definitely off-putting for her. When you reflect, and when I had retired and thought I was done, it was definitely something that I could look back on and go, that was really cool. And I will take that away with me for sure. And it's something that I managed to pull off. And again, I needed the lifters, so Jess Moulds and Kayla Cullen. So it was just the fact that I got to do it and people saw it. So I'm stoked to be a part of it.
That is very cool, isn't it? That is Anna Harrison there herself. What was it about Anna Harrison that made her the ideal candidate to pull off this move?
So Anna has a background in volleyball. So she is actually back on the beach volleyball circuit now, and I think that helps with her timing, because in volleyball you do a lot of standing jumps and blocking at the net, so that really helped with the timing. She's also very slight, nice and weightless for the lifter to help propel her up. She already had an amazing standing jump. I would also say that Anna, I consider her one of the most competitive athletes New Zealand has ever seen.
Is that right?
Yeah, just the way she plays netball in general, she ekes out an existence of the barest of scraps in the defensive end. She will go for balls that no one else would consider that they would even have a chance of getting. She's the kind of athlete, she'll never die wondering. And the commentator, when he said, Anna Harrison, you are a freak, I agree with that.
Goodness gracious. Because you do need the right combination of defenders to make it work. Other teams would say about a tenth of the practice needs the combinations per week.
Yeah, and you need someone who's quite strong and solid, I guess, who's going to help lift you. So once Anna did it, we did see it creep into the game little by little. There is a player in the Australian League, Kate Shimmin, Kate Shimmin, now Kate Walsh. She has a similar build to Anna, and so she was a really good candidate, and she started doing it. It has, little by little players have started doing it, but there was actually a rule change that the governing body made in 2016. So the kind of jump that players are allowed to do now has changed a little bit. So in 2016, the International Netball Federation changed the rule, which meant that you couldn't block the shot if the ball was on the downward trajectory. So when Anna Harrison did it, the ball was pretty much at the top of the arc, or just coming down a little bit.
Yep.
If it's coming down a little bit, players aren't allowed to do that now. So what you'll see with the player defenders now who are blocking the shot, they are trying to sort of attack the ball soon after it's released from the shooter. So they are trying to get it on the upward trajectory, which has actually made it a lot harder, and I was quite disappointed that the INF decided to make that rule change, because I thought it was hard enough to do in the first place, and it wasn't as if the game was being dominated by these defenders blocking shots. It was still quite a rare thing to do, and it just doesn't look as good now. So I was a bit disappointed about that. Yeah,
that's a bit nuanced, isn't it? I mean, is that rule, is that necessary?
I don't think it was, because defenders weren't able to pull. It was hard enough to do as it was. Yeah. So I was disappointed they did that.
The ongoing innovations of, again, it's so interesting, isn't it? Just comes to mind a really interesting interview I was hearing actually just yesterday with, basketball legend, US legend, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So, legend in many years ago, several decades ago in basketball, but just saying, he can't hardly even relate to the basketball today because they are so slick.
Right.
they are so talented.
Yeah.
In a way, he just can't keep up, albeit him being a basketball legend. Are we seeing a similar thing with netball, where it's kind of reaching from my, fresh eyes, I guess you could say, a certain level of professionalism where you go, this is just on a new level?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you would consider the ANZ Premiership in New Zealand, which is our elite domestic league, you would consider that semi-professional, definitely. And if you are a Silver Fern, you are a full-time athlete. So you've got a contract with your franchise and you're a Silver Fern, you don't need to work. And so compared to 10, 20, 30 years ago, when it was, you got $100 for a game for playing for New Zealand. Now these players are spending a lot more time in the gym, so they're way fitter, they're way stronger, they're bigger, they're Amazonian-like. So there's no way the game can no longer be described as a schoolgirl game. And I think when Harrison did what she did, I think it made people understand who weren't followers of netball that these were actual real athletes and they were putting their bodies on the line. Yeah.
Lovely to talk with you, Bridget. It's been so fascinating. Very, very cool. Before you go, any other innovations you'd like to see come to netball?
Yeah, well, there is one thing I'd like to see, and it wouldn't actually involve a rule change, but it would involve maybe a rejig of stadium configuration. So you might notice that if you watch a live netball game at a high-level netball game, a lot of the players end up kind of going out of the court because the ball is sailing out the back line, and so they run out of court and try to flick it back in to keep the ball alive. But a lot of the time the players are having to pull up short because there's a hoarding in the way, or there's the front row of spectators, or there's a commentary desk in the way. I would love to see a minimum sort of distance put in outside the standard court, made way wider than it currently is. And so you'd really give players a license to absolutely go for it when some of the best highlights in a netball game come from when those players are trying to save a ball that's flying out of court. But currently they're kind of hindered from what they can do because they don't want to get injured and crash into a hoarding. So that is one thing I think would be really great for the game, yeah.
Very good, Bridget. Thank you very much for your time. It is 4 away from 3. This is called Giant of the Sea by Mark Vanillau.
Soon after delivering his remarks, he collapsed in the meeting hall and could not be resuscitated. RNZ Pacific Regional Correspondent Calvin Anthony spoke with Acting Prime Minister Sever Ainu about the loss and Taupo's legacy.
He was one of the VIP guests invited by the island of Nui community to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the foundation of the chapel on the island, when the foundation was first laid, the main chapel on the island. So yesterday they had a festivity to commemorate that milestone. During the dancing, the entertainment, he stood up and made some remarks in the meeting hall where everyone on the island and the community were congregating, and he was very excited when he made those remarks. And just immediately after those saying those remarks, and when he sat down, that was when he had that sort of shock that came to his body that made him collapse, and unfortunately that he couldn't be resuscitated.
An extremely sad occasion for Mr. Taupo and his family. Do we have any information on his funeral arrangements?
Plans are still being put together by the government in conjunction with the family. At this stage, it is not confirmed yet as to when exactly is the state funeral.
Just focusing a bit on his contribution as a government minister and the deputy prime minister. How important was he to the Tuvalu government and his contribution to politics in Tuvalu?
Even before he entered the parliament, Mr. Taupo was an important public official. He rose up the public service ranks up to the highest level, became a permanent secretary, and following that he was appointed as the deputy permanent representative to the United Nations in New York. And after serving time in New York, he was then promoted to ambassador level in Taipei. So the Tuvalu ambassador to Taiwan. He had served with distinction throughout his public service career, and then he entered parliament the last 3 years and was appointed deputy prime minister and minister responsible for fisheries and trade. He held a very important ministerial portfolio in cabinet as deputy prime minister, but also in terms of fisheries, being the single highest source of revenue and income to Tuvalu under his portfolio of fisheries. So he played and held a very important role within the government and within cabinet.
Indeed, an important and influential figure, as you say. Now, what happens next in terms of his successor being appointed to the role of deputy PM?
So the constitution, the Tuvalu constitution requires when there is a vacancy in the office of a member of parliament constituency, then that constituency would then need to go through a by-election. So it takes roughly about 4 to 3 weeks process for the by-election to be called. So that's what will unfold following the laying of his body to his permanent resting place. And then that by-election process would be then triggered following that time. So roughly we are looking at about a month and a half before his